Welcome, everybody. My name is Kathleen Jasper. I'm really excited to be here with you today. We are going through the School Leaders Licensure Assessment today, the SLLA 6990. And this webinar is going to be great for you if you're studying for any leadership exam, including the FELE. And if you're a teacher who's just checking things out, seeing if maybe you want to be an educational leader or become an assistant principal, this is a great course for you as well. The other thing that we will be doing is going through test questions, and I have a presentation here I'll be writing on the screen and all of that. So if you have a question that you really want us to answer, you can email us or get us on direct message on Facebook, and we will do our very best to get back to you. If you email us, we will get back to you. We always get back to you if you email us. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So this is going to be for the School Leaders Licensure Exam or Assessment, the SLLA 690. Quick little background, if you're taking the 6011 or the FELE, this is going to align, trust me. The questions are very similar, the content is similar, and the skills they're assessing are the same. So just follow along with us here. I'll refer to the FELE a little bit. I'll tell you which subtest it goes with and all of that. But the focus will be today on the SLLA. This is a new assessment, relatively new. It used to be the 6011, and that's the old test. So I'll just write up here. The old was 6011. They're still using it in some states, but most states have switched to the 6990. And all that means is that the leadership standards changed, or they decided to use a new set of leadership standards. So they changed the exam. But I've looked at both specs, both blueprints. They're very much aligned. So if you're still taking the 6011, don't worry about it, but most states have switched to the 6990. Sorry, there's a lot of numbers we're talking about here. This is the blueprint of the SLLA 6990. You can see I've got, like, for my visual people here, I've got a little pie chart, but for the most part, I'd like you to pay attention to this particular table here. So there are 7 sections of the exam. The last section, section 7, is the written portion of the exam. We're going to talk about it, don't worry. I was, for this webinar, just going to go over instructional leadership, but I know so many of you are taking this exam pretty quickly. We are going to have follow-up webinars, but some of you need this information right away. So I decided it is going to be heavy on the instructional leadership portion, but we're going to hit every single content area because looking at the responses that I got, I figured that would be a better way to differentiate my instruction and make sure I hit the places where you guys need. But please notice that the majority of the test, about 61%, comes from these top 3 categories here. So you want to make sure that, you are thinking about those particular categories a lot. Now, you still want to know these other ones. You still want to be looking at ethical leadership and organizational leadership and community engagement. They're all important, but you will notice that on these 3 content areas of the exam, the strategic leadership, instructional leadership, and climate and cultural leadership, the concepts in those content categories are present throughout the entire exam. You will see instructional leadership type questions in the organizational leadership, in the ethical leadership, because there are concepts that surround instructional leadership that are going to be applicable for all sections of the exam. So just pay attention to that when we move forward. And I'll call your attention to it to make more sense. Now, we get a lot of questions about what's a passing score. Every state is different, but for the most part on the new 6990, it's a 151-ish, 153-ish. So it all just depends on what state you are in. So check your state. I am not in the business of communicating state requirements. And the reason being is because every state is different and they change constantly. And you know that being educators. So what I do is I prepare you for the exam. I do know the scores needed for the most part, and I do know what states are looking for, but I try not to communicate state information because it's ever changing and we're online and somebody could look at this 3 months from now and watch it and go with something I said that's outdated. So for the most part, for 6990, most states are requiring a 151. I would shoot for a 75 to 80% correct on the multiple choice. Now, the multiple choice, they call it selected response, but that's just a churched up word for multiple choice. There are 120 multiple choice questions. And then there are 4 constructed response questions. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And this is a combined score. So let me just show you something here. You're going to do 120 multiple choice questions, and then you're going to do 4 constructed responses. So it's 4 essays, essentially. Now they're short. You don't need to be taking 20 hours on each essay. These are short, extended responses. It's not a full-on like essay test, right? But they are assessing your ability to communicate in your writing, certain things based on the data. And we are going to go through that today. But you have 4 of them, and they're worth anywhere from 0 to 3 points. So you get a total of 12 possible extra points that can go towards this score. It's a combined score. On the Feely, it's a separate score. For the SLLA, it's a combined score. So that's kind of good news, because then you can leverage, your multiple choice. If you do really well on the multiple choice, you can do a little bit not so well on the writing. But if you do really well on the writing, you can miss a few more on the multiple choice. So either way, I'm going to show you how to attack this constructed response, and I'm going to show you how to attack the multiple choice. So it's going to be fine. Okay. So discuss in the chat. If you know more about it, if you've taken the test before, discuss in the comments and in the chat with your fellows. I am, like I said, we started with Feely. I am still digging into this exam and really analyzing, the psychometrics of it, which takes a little bit of time. But this is what I have found to be most tried and true. Now, if you have a different experience, go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll take a look at that as well. Now, when I talk about the any assessment, I always talk about good words and phrases you should be looking for in the answer choices. Now, there are also things you should be doing as an educational leader. It's not just about the test, but it's about becoming an educational leader. Now, these are pie in the sky situations. We know if you're already in your internship, if you're already working as a dean or an AP, you know that you can't always do this all the time, because you got kids doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You got teachers doing crazy stuff. You've got, the fire alarms going off. You've got things going on during the day. But in an ideal world where you had all the money in the world, the support from the district, you had parent support, teacher support, all of it, this is what you would do. Okay. So let's take a look at good words and phrases. And we want to be looking for these in the answer choices when we're answering questions on this exam. Of course, most important, and you will see it on every single content category, using data to make decisions. This is the first thing you do. Always look at the data first. I'm going to show you examples where all 4 answer choices look like good answers on this test, but there's one that talks about referencing data before you make a decision. And that's the right answer, because that's what should be driving you. You can't just be going on your gut. You can't always be going on, oh, well, I feel like this might be the way to go. It's not a feelings factory. Okay. It's school. Mine is a business. So it's not a feelings factory. Hate to be mean, but it's not. You got to look at the data and figure out what's going on. The other thing is collaborative leadership. You're looking at this data with teachers. Together, you're making decisions. Okay. It's not you running the show all the time. You want to make sure that you are working with teachers collaboratively, using their expertise. There's expertise in the building that goes beyond you as a leader. You got to bring them in. Alignment to the standards, of course, this is a standardized assessment. You are preparing students to take standardized assessments. You're preparing teachers to prepare students to take standardized assessments. You see how that goes. And all of that aligns back to your particular state standards. And that is going to be a driving force in how you govern the school, how you lead the school. The other thing I want to talk about too is resilience, and that has a lot to do with data analysis. You may see questions on leadership resiliency or resilience leadership. And basically what this means is that in the face of complete and utter failure, which is going to be a big part of your life as an instructional leader, as an educational leader, you have angry parents in the office. You got maybe your test scores aren't doing real well. The football game got rained out. I mean, it's just one thing after another, and you're getting hammered. Your resiliency is the thing that's going to keep you going, and that's what makes a leader. So those will be questions like, where something failed, something didn't work, something became just a total failure. What did you do? Well, you reevaluated the data, came up with another plan, and kept going. So make sure you pay attention to that. Resiliency has to do with failure and how you overcome failure. And I will tell you, a lot of districts, when they're hiring assistant principals now, they will go more towards resiliency questions, more so than like, what do you know questions, because they know you can regurgitate all this good language like we're going to do on this test. But what do you do when all that fails? How do you continue building a collaborative environment in your school when it's not working? So resiliency, and that's part of being a leader. It's about failure on a daily basis. Succession management has a lot to do with resiliency. This has to do with building capacity as well, building other leaders in your school, bringing people along, finding that leadership skill and saying, hey, you'd make a great assistant principal. Have you thought about doing X, Y, and Z? Do you want to help me with my discipline referrals? Yeah, that's what I would do. You want to be an assistant principal? Come help me with my discipline referrals. But that is a way to build capacity and bring people along. The other thing we want to be focused on for sure is student achievement. Everything should be driving student achievement. And I know that sounds obvious, but when you're in the midst of a problem on this exam, sometimes that gets lost. So rigor and relevance, the two words that are pervasive in education today. I don't know if people really know what they mean, but they are there. You want to be moving towards a more rigorous, a more critical thinking curriculum in your school. You want to help teachers, provide a more higher order thinking situation in their classrooms. That takes training, that takes time. Also relevance, things need to be real world. We're moving now to online learning and things like that. And we've got to make it relevant to students' lives. The term ongoing is a good term as well. As we're collecting data, as we're working towards school standards, as we're building rigorous and relevant curriculum, we are continuing to improve the process. I did this twice, and that's okay. Maybe that was for a reason, because ongoing continuous improvement is a huge part of your job. Don't get complacent because you got to be. Don't be too discouraged because you got to see or got an, whatever it is, you've got to keep going and move forward. You also want to close the achievement gap. That's going to be a big piece of this exam. Where can you close the gap? And what that means is you're going to have students in different subgroups from different ethnicities, from different socioeconomic status, from different walks of life, right? From at-risk students to ESE students to ELL students. How do you close that gap? Meaning, how do you get those students to achieve at the same levels that the students who are high achieving are at? Bringing those kids up, closing that gap. It's a buzz term. It's been used since the accountability movement. Make sure you're aware of how to do it because it's an important part of your job. High expectations for all students, no matter where they're from, no matter what scores they're getting, whether they're your AP honors students or your students who are working towards a special diploma. Every student can be held to high expectations, and you need to make sure that's happening in your building. Also, being culturally responsive is a big piece of this exam. You've got to make sure that you're paying attention to culture in your school and also training your teachers to be more culturally responsive. We'll talk more about that. And then we get into the last portion of the exam, which has to do with more of the laws and governing of the school, making sure that students are having the ability to exercise their rights. Students have rights and you can't violate them, and you got to do your best not to violate them. And sometimes you violate student rights without even knowing it. Because you're in the moment and you're trying to keep people safe and things like that. So due process is a good word on this exam, and you want to be on the lookout for that. Due process means a lot of things. I actually have a test question that I want to talk about in here. So we'll talk more about that. Then we have equity. Everything you do should be centered around equity, giving each student the same type of opportunity or the same opportunity to succeed. We want to pay attention to stakeholders. That means the school community, anybody who has a stake in the school. So that's parents, that's teachers, that's your custodial staff, that's your office staff, that's the business leader down the road. It's Target, if Target's in your neighborhood. It's everybody. So making sure you're making those connections. And then finally, thinking of diversity as an asset. What I like to say, no deficit thinking. Meaning, stay away from words like, well, our kids they're from here and they can't do that. And our kids, well, they don't have the same opportunities, and our kids are poor, or our kids are this, or our kids are that. It doesn't matter who your kids are. No deficit thinking. Diversity is an asset. We can move every kid. All means all. All means all. So keep that in mind when you're looking for answers on the exam.